So, but she done overlooked that. She told them, you understand what I'm saying, that she make her own decisions and got her own mind. But I feel as though, you understand what I'm saying, she need to rekindle her relationship with her family. Oh, yeah. I done told her. Yeah, she need to go back and, whatever degree she would follow. She was trying to get a degree in criminal justice. So I told her, you understand, once I get out, you understand, you need to continue that. You need to go and get finished your schooling. I think that's something she need to do.
That night, Ronnie showered for an hour, damn near scrubbing all of his skin off, trying to escape that prison smell, which seems embedded into his pores. The next day, he visits the rest of his family. He brings flowers to the graves of his 2 sisters, his grandmother, and his father. He then gets health insurance, which does wonders for his spirit. He gets the health care he was waiting on in prison. However, after the thrill of being free faded away, he realized the harsh truth of his life. Who will hire an ex-con in his 70s? Although Ashley allows Ronnie to move in with her, she has a roommate, so there's some tension there. Ashley also goes back to school, no longer able to give Ronnie her full undivided attention. She leaves him feeling a bit isolated. He looked around at all these people that now supported him. Where were they when he was locked up? Well, he still needs them. Some say they could get him a job as a stonemason. He learned how to do this in prison. He had vocational skills.
But I got people, you understand, that's lined up with me, and they telling me, when I get out, once I touch down, all I got to do is come and see them. I go see them, you understand, so that they going to put me down, you understand, some things. Like, I already got a woman right now that she own a warehouse. And she done already told me, you understand, once I get out, just come and see her, you understand, so I have a job.
But these job opportunities never came to be, or when Ronnie did get interviews, his age and prison background made a rejection a foregone conclusion. And then there were the looks. Hard to explain it, but it was there. In the minds of some, there was always a feeling that maybe he really did it. It's easier to believe that than to believe you turned your back on him. Soon enough, when he needed to borrow money, the phone calls stopped coming. Resentment and bitterness marry and have kids. Those kids grow into anger. Anger at his friends and family. Anger at the justice system. He is especially angry at Sarah Bost. No, not anger, but something else. Maybe he could see her, talk to her. Maybe it would give them some sort of closure. So, against the advice of everyone, he decided to look her up. He finds her number and calls. A young man answers. He is polite and inviting. Ronnie asks for Sarah. The young man asks who he is. Ronnie identifies himself. And then there's a notable pause on the phone. Turns out, this young man is a family member, and he informs Ronnie that Sarah Bost died of natural causes on December 1st, 2015, at the age of 93. All left to cherish the memory of her are 4 stepchildren and 7 step-grandchildren. To her credit, she never allowed her assault to break her spirit or wither her faith. If anything, it only reconfirmed her faith. It made her a better person, because she now had real-life empathy for the lesser of us, black and white. Not to say she was not always concerned with the poor. She was. But it's different when some of life's harshness finds you. Then, and only then, do you truly understand why we must help and support each other. Sarah understood this. A good woman became a better woman. That is a worthwhile legacy. The young man wishes Ronnie good luck, and in turn, Ronnie gives his condolences. A strange thing happened. His anger started to vanish. Sarah did not allow that night to destroy her life. She let go of her anger, fear, and hurt, then moved on. And now Ronnie could too. Still broke, Ronnie reached out to Joel from Texas. Joel was waiting for his call in Pounces. He sent Ronnie a plane ticket to Texas. Upon Ronnie's arrival, they immediately went to church. He then took him to see his dad. After, the three men ate a steak and had several beers. Then they stayed all day and deep into the night. It was hard for Ronnie to explain why it affected him so much. Maybe it was because the church was mixed. He was not used to seeing blacks and whites pray together, let alone holding hands while doing so. This congregation truly praised as one family. It affected him so deeply, he hardly wanted to leave. Ever had an experience so powerful, you knew you'd never see the world as before? Ever been that lucky? Joel did take care of Ronnie. When he returned to North Carolina, Ronnie breathed easier. He smiled quicker, and he slept more peacefully. A week later, he got a call from an organization that represents wrongly convicted criminals. They will assist Ronnie in getting money from both the city of Concord as well as the statewide mandated reward given by North Carolina. They will accept a 5% cut. With nothing to lose, Ronnie agrees. A month later, luck finally finds Ronnie. He is rewarded $1 million from the city of Concord and the North Carolina Maximum Wrongful Conviction Award of $750,000. A lot of money, but Ronnie would trade it for those 44 years. But he has learned to accept any blessing with humility and gratitude. Now, he and Ashley can get their own house. Speaking of houses, he can finally make good on his promise to build his mom a new one. Ronnie and Ashley get married again, this time with real rings, and all of their loved ones in attendance. Afterwards, the two take off to New York for a vacation. They take in a few shows on Broadway, go shopping in Soho, take lazy walks in Central Park, and even visit the 9/11 Memorial in Ground Zero. Later that night, they have a huge room with a giant window that overlooks the Statue of Liberty. Ronnie wakes up with a start. The bedroom is submerged in darkness. The clock says 3:45 a.m. He looks over at Ashley. She's in a deep sleep. He kisses her on the forehead. He knows they're in it for the long haul. Ronnie reaches for a cup of water, sitting on the stand next to the bed. It's empty, and he's dying of thirst. Ronnie grabs the cup and gets out of bed and walks toward the window. Ronnie looks out the window as the city that does not sleep, sleeps. As he admires Lady Liberty, she glows, as if watching over every borough in sight. As he stares at her, it seems as if she is staring right back at him, with a smirk. That's weird. For some reason, Ronnie walks over to the door. It's locked. He tries the knob several more times, but it's not budging. He looks for a light switch. No such thing. He turns around, looks for Ashley, but she is missing. He drops the cup as waves of confusion hit him. He walks towards the door again, but this time there are bars. In fact, the whole wall, as well as the window, have disappeared and been replaced with bars. Hundreds of bars. He manically spins around, looking at this living, breathing, constantly changing room. All he sees are bars. Ronnie's heart begins to race. A all too familiar panic starts to emerge within him. Everything goes black. What is happening?
All inmates are to be out of their cell and on their way to either breakfast or their assigned jobs.
Ronnie wakes up with a shock. A devastating reality begins to dawn on Ronnie. He is still living in prison. Ronnie watches as prisoners pass by his cell. He screams at one.
What's the date?
One of them screams back.
January 9th.
He realizes what has happened. Ashley called him with the bad news, and then he went to sleep and dreamed that the news was good. A correctional officer yells at Ronnie.
Time to go.
Ronnie grabs his cane and then walks out of his cell and finds his place among other inmates going to breakfast. Ronnie joins the line of prisoners. He disappears into the crowd. He disappears into the systems. He disappears into oblivion. Now that we know that Ronnie was rejected by a 3-judge panel that makes up the 4th Circuit, let's see why. Would you believe me if I told you the judge appointed by President Obama saw Ronnie Long as innocent? This is a woman who has likely struggled against institutionalized sexism to get to the highest position in her field. A woman who worked as part of the team that prosecuted the first case the United States ever brought involving the Violence Against Women Act. Judge Thacker saw an innocent man convicted of rape and allowed the truth to be her guide. And perhaps it was just a coincidence that Judge Nehemiah, who was appointed by George H.W. Bush, and Judge Richardson, who was appointed by Donald Trump, could not see Ronnie as innocent? Let's take a look at them. Nehemiah fought to prevent gays from being married, basically saying a ban on gay marriage is constitutional. He also fought against a transgender teen's right to use the school bathroom, refusing to acknowledge the teen's chosen identity. And of course, he strongly supported President Trump's travel ban. Ronnie never had a chance with a judge who supports such oppression and intolerance. Now, Judge Richardson is an interesting case. A conservative from a liberal family, he fought to make sure Dylan Roof, the piece of shit that killed 9 black people in a South Carolina church, got a death sentence. Ironically, his ruling to keep Ronnie in prison for another 3 decades is essentially a death sentence too. Unless Ronnie lives to be 100, Roof won't be the only one to have a black man's blood on his hands. Speaking of death sentences, ever heard of Rodney Reed? Reed was convicted of the murder of Stacey Stites back in 1996. Many feel this was a wrongful conviction. Regardless, he was set to be executed on November 20th, 2019. The execution was delayed a few days before it could be carried out because celebrities, politicians, and journalists rallied and put pressure on the Texas court system. I sometimes wonder if it would have been better if Ronnie had not been taken off death row. Perhaps like Rodney Reed, if Ronnie had a ticking clock on his life, perhaps the media would take interest. Instead, Ronnie would die from 1,000 cuts. But perhaps Nehemiah and Richardson didn't see what they did as a death sentence for Ronnie. They could not, or perhaps refused, to see Ronnie Long's obvious innocence. I mean, let's think about this for a second. Ronnie is a wrongfully convicted elderly sick man whose mother is dying of cancer. What harm could it do to allow him a few years of freedom? Nehemiah and Richardson both feel this case dragged on long enough. No shit. And Ronnie Long has been in prison as it dragged on and on. And I was not aware that there was a time limit on justice. But apparently, these 2 judges believe there is. Luckily, Thacker was not having it and made her anger at their indifference loud and clear. For more than 43 years, Long has consistently maintained his innocence and continued to search for the truth. In contrast, we arrive at this point as a result of the actions of the state, the slow, stubborn drip of undisclosed evidence that this state originally said did not exist. In these circumstances, Long must prevail. To hold otherwise will provide incentive for the state to lie, obfuscate, and withhold evidence for a long enough period. This I cannot abide.